Welcome back, Fragrance Fiend here today with Black Saffron by Byredo, a release from 2012. The Eau de Parfum is definitely one of the more intense ones from their lineup. This unisex fragrance falls under the amber spicy category. It comes in both 50ml and 100ml, and it's by far one of the most intense out of the entire Byredo lineup. The description on the website is as follows. Often associated to fire, saffron is considered as the most auspicious color in India. The monks and sages of Hinduism wear saffron clothes as a symbol of abstinence from all the material things, thoughts, and pleasures. It has always been a part of Byredo's founder Indian upbringing, both in smell, taste, and color. The fragrance is inspired by this idea of unity and inclusion. So, interesting concept. Let's get into the note breakdown. So in the top you have juniper berries, pomelo, and saffron with a heart of black violet, rose, and leather. And lastly, a base of blonde woods, raspberry, and vetiver. So let's give it a spray. It's got a pretty reasonable atomizer. Let's try it on the skin. So the opening is just incredibly sharp, it just really bites into that leather straight away. It's also got a very prominent violet note which can be quite piercing as well. I think for me, violet either makes or breaks a fragrance. It really has to be balanced quite perfectly. I'm not really a huge fan of fragrances with violet in it, but the violet note in this is kind of a bit of a middle ground for me. The leather aroma chemical they use for this is kind of reminiscent of the one they use in Tom Ford's ombre leather. And just to be clear, that doesn't mean I think this smells like Tom Ford ombre leather, it just means the leather element in itself is kind of reminiscent of it. Nevertheless, it does have a very luxurious aroma about it, almost like stepping into like a luxury sports car. Pomelo note in the top as well is very prominent as well. In case you didn't know, pomelo is like a bit of a type of grapefruit, but a lot more sweeter. And that definitely helps take the edge off it. Saffron is also known for being quite dark, spicy, and leathery. Once again, that just complements that violet and leather even more. It's not until that raspberry kicks in where it becomes fully developed. The juniper berries add a bit of a fruitiness to it as well, and that really counterbalances that violet and leather, which is just so intense. I think raspberry is always the perfect note to kind of counter anything too leathery or oody. It just adds a nice sweet but tarty nature to the mix. As it dries down, the woods come out a tiny bit more, but it doesn't really transform massively. I mean, of course, it's a very technical, complex fragrance. All the notes make perfect sense. They just all line up in the right category to make it smell like a good fragrance. But it is quite linear ultimately in its dry down. It's a very mature, bold, assertive fragrance, not something I'd really describe as like seductive or fun. This is one of those fragrances that just means business. It's kind of got like mafia boss written all over it. And that being said, it's not really a fragrance for everyone. I actually spray this in my clothing at least about half an hour before I go out, so that leather kind of tones down a bit. It's completely different from the rest of the Byredo lineup. It's a very demanding fragrance. Often their brand seems to focus a lot more on light floral or woody scents, which are quite delicate by nature, whereas this is the opposite. Somewhat reminiscent of like, say, a Tom Ford, but it's a lot more smoother and refined than that. When you smell that opening, you kind of get the impression that the performance may be 8 to 10 hours, but unfortunately it does not last that long. It is quite strong the first 4 hours, but when it begins to die down, it really does lose its potency. Then after about the 5 or 6 hour mark, that's when it becomes a bit of a skin scent. Projection is definitely above average, though people will smell this on you, so I absolutely recommend spraying this on your skin a few times if you do consider buying it. It's not one of those ones where you'll really just fall in love with it at first sight, because over time it may become a little too cloying even for yourself. And I'd probably recommend against spraying this one close to the chest region, as it can become quite nauseating throughout the day. And even now, I can smell it literally filling up the room at the moment. You only really need a few sprays to get by with this one. If you do happen to come across a 10ml with one of their discovery sets, or a 50ml, that is definitely more than enough. So overall, it's quite a captivating scent. It's definitely personality in a bottle, but does this align with your personality? That is the question. The only thing I'd probably change about this scent to like it more would be to tone down that violet note, which is kind of counterintuitive because it is built around that and the leather accord. But anyway, that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.